Welcome. This is our very special COVID-19 collecting special meetup for Australasia Preserves. I would like to tell everyone we are recording this meetup and it will be put onto the Australasia Preserves YouTube forum after the event. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this event is being broadcast from, the land of the Wurundjeri, and pay respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Firstly up, a little bit of boring but dry and essential housekeeping. Hopefully you can all see the housekeeping slide up at the minute. Firstly, while the session's being recorded and while the presentations are going on, if you can just keep your cameras and microphones, make sure they're off, that makes it better. And when we get to the discussion, very happy to see faces and get a sense of everyone here today. If possible, it's great if you can have an identifiable name on Zoom. This helps us to just get a sense of community while we're here online so people can refer to you and know who you are. You can click on yourself in the participants list and rename yourself. If you can't find this, yell out in the chat box and someone will be able to help you through it. We have a Twitter hashtag. Please be noisy and amplify what we're learning here today. Hashtag AusPreserves. With the chat function, do use it to introduce yourself and say hello. Call out if there's any tech issues as we go today. Ask questions as we go so we can get straight into the discussion after the lightning talks today. And feel free to have a bit of a discussion as well. Just use it to create a sense of community here today. The code of conduct, yes, there is a link here. We do encourage everyone to be familiar with this. Australasia Preserves is a very diverse community and we want everyone to bring a spirit of respect and friendly inquiry to all of our interactions that we have in the community. So without further ado, let's get into it. The COVID-19 collecting special. We were inspired to pull this together after there was a bit of discussion on the Australasia Preserves forum. First up, I think Matthew Burgess kick-started it with a bit of a question and then it took off. And also there's a whole heap of initiatives going on all around the world. In this area, there's been high-level statements made from UNESCO about turning the threat of COVID-19 into an opportunity for greater support for collecting documentary heritage. There's also been a statement developed by the International Council on Archives, building on the UNESCO piece. And this ICA statement was supported by a whole bunch of organizations: ARMA International, OData, the Digital Preservation Coalition, Research Data Alliance, UNESCO Memory of the World, and World Data System. So that ICA statement focuses on 3 principles. Decisions must be documented, records and data should be secured and preserved in all sectors, and the security, preservation, and access to digital content should be facilitated during the shutdown. So these high-level statements, I think they go a very long way for demonstrating really the importance of what we all do as stewards of digital materials in our various contexts. And to me, it gives me a purpose and a reason to keep doing all of this hard work on the ground, working out how to collect ephemeral and constantly changing digital materials, fighting for the resources to do what we do. And I guess that's what we're here to talk about today, to share what we're doing, to share our issues, our challenges, and to learn from each other. We are really fortunate to be joined by some really great speakers in our region, sharing their work on COVID-19 collecting today. We will have 4 short lightning talks, sharing details, and then heaps of time for discussion and questions. So I'm going to throw straight over now to Dave Allen and Catherine Cottle, representing State Library Queensland and the work going on there. Dave, Catherine, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm Catherine Cottle, State Library of Queensland from the Collection Building team. I'm filling in today for Robin Hamilton, who's the lead for collection building, and she is the one who devised our immediate COVID-19 collecting plan. So I'll just run you through it very quickly. in April, we were very fortunate to jump onto digital photographs immediately, both from our photographers who we purchased from and from our staff. There was an immediate response. We were very pleased from the regions, remote areas, all around the state. So that worked really well. And of course, with digital preservation, I think we do that all really well. We also did a call out to the Public Libraries Network to request digital photographs from regional libraries. And then we did another call out to the public asking for COVID-19 ephemera and deposits in NED. We're also, of course, heavily involved in web archiving COVID-19 sites. And we have, in addition to all that, we put out another call out for emails from businesses and local community groups, as well as from our own staff. So that's all going on. I just wanted to mention some of our challenge areas that I think are impacting all of us. Probably one of our biggest challenges is with Facebook, where it's a challenge to try to archive, and especially knowing that our remote Indigenous communities, a lot of them rely completely on Facebook as a means of communication. We really want to be able to be partners, stewards, and collect in that area, that's a bit of a challenge area for us. Another challenge area for us right now is redacting personal information. So not only are we getting photographs, we're also starting to receive donations with government documents like the border pass with someone's personal registration information and email address. Yes, there you go, David, thank you. So when we receive donations like this, we're immediately thinking, how are we going to redact this information in a way that's viable, feasible for everyone to do. Another challenge area for us is with COVID-19 podcasts. There are, of course, many access rights with podcasts sometimes, and so we are challenged with collecting COVID-19 podcasts quickly, in that there are lots of issues around the rights with that. And of course, with our web archiving, another challenge area for us is the legislative demands in Queensland, where we have to have permission in order to archive sites. So that's an ongoing challenge. We have been working closely with the NASLA archive network to, the Digital Archiving Network, to share ideas and issues, and we've been really fortunate that they've taken those issues further for us to the heads of collecting throughout NASLA to express concerns, especially about Facebook and web archiving. So up next for us, I think that we've sort of reached the peak on that immediate response to COVID-19 in Queensland, where we've been able to capture it really well, very quickly. And I think the next step for us will be more of that, collecting the stories, the narratives, looking for a bit more of a thoughtful response rather than that very immediate response that we've captured. So I think we're probably now going into maybe stage 2 of a longer, more thoughtful narrative type of response. And then I think phase 3 for us will be, of course, the long range future reflection stage. So that's pretty much where we are. David, did you want to add to that?
I suppose from my point of view, yeah, there's just the redacting of stuff. I noticed I spelled Palm Beach incorrectly, but who cares? So one of the big issues we're still facing with is that we're getting a flood of emails from people, such as what's on the screen there, from organisations. So this is an email from the union saying, hey, we can't march, but you can attend using Zoom and all that good stuff. The major problem is a lot of the emails coming in aren't your typical emails, because they've got all these hidden URLs in there to pull through all the information. So how we preserve this sort of stuff, and knowing that a lot of the material is actually not under the control of the person that issued the email, is going to be interesting, because those URLs will disappear. shortly, probably. So that's going to be very interesting from that perspective. So whether we just do a PDF printout of the document and work it from there, that's one thing we might have to look at. So I'm interested about what Matthew's doing in that area, because most of the emails coming out are campaign monitor type emails, which pull in images from all over the place to create the actual email. So that's always good value. And it's nice that the government's put a big A on these sort of things, but it makes OCRing of these sort of documents a pain in the butt. But it's just my personal view. And just letting you know that the border crossings were done. This is up in the mountains where there's basically a single lane road, and they basically blocked it off. That's how serious they were on the border closure. I don't think there's anything else. Oh, tons of pictures coming through. Yeah, so they'll keep us busy for a while. Anything to add, Catherine?
No, we were really fortunate, like I said, that we were able to contract with our vendors to photograph immediately, but even better was the response from our staff, including David Allen, who was able to go out and capture images like this from the community, which are just priceless. We really were very fortunate that our staff photographers and other staff, including David, went out immediately to capture and respond back to us with digital photographs immediately into our system. So that's been really good, really positive, and fantastic that we can share those so quickly.
So it's interesting because this particular picture is of the Surfers Paradise. This is on Easter. It's normally packed full of people. So it's closed down. They're reopening the beaches, so you have to be there at the right time to get the pictures. That's one of the issues, especially with the relaxing of the rules.
Yeah, we provided letters to the staff who went out to the border, to the beaches, to indicate that they were photographing and videotaping on behalf of the State Library, and that seemed to be really helpful. We also stressed with everyone we were talking to that it was safety first. We were more concerned about their personal safety than about them capturing, documenting COVID-19, that we really wanted them to be careful and be safe, because at the time we just didn't know what was going to happen. So we were very respectful of that. We were respectful of the agencies we were working with, including hospitals, the police, the Border Patrol. They responded in kind, and they were very, very helpful in allowing us to document quite quickly and throughout the state.
Perfect timing. Thank you so much, Catherine and Dave. I was just about to play my get off music and you didn't even need it. Thank you so much for sharing that creative response. And we're only one talk in and we're already getting the dreaded email preservation question coming up. So hopefully there's lots of discussion about that later, especially after Matt shares his talk. But what I will do is throw over now to Valerie Love. Please share with us your work. Hey Val, I'm not sure if we can hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Gotcha. You're good to go.
All right. Well, kia ora koutou. I'm Valerie Love, the Senior Digital Archivist at the Alexander Turnbull Library, Te Puna Mataranga o Aotearoa. And today I'm giving an update on the National Library of New Zealand's initial rapid response online collecting for COVID-19 and the lockdown. And first off, I want to acknowledge that this work has been extremely collaborative between staff and teams across the National Library. And I'm only covering a small portion of the work that's happening at the library while we're closed to the public. So I'm going to begin by quoting my colleague, Amy Joseph, who described this time as where New Zealanders are spaced far apart physically, but part of a tight-knit, vibrant, Aotearoa-wide community online. We all wanted to help collect the content that Kiwis are sharing online to preserve the official government messaging, the valuable journalism, the generosity of the community, the responses of creatives, and the shared humor that is helping us all get through this week by week. And I thought that was such a beautiful way of describing the work that library staff are doing, again, really across teams. So ahead of the lockdown, the library had already ramped up our focus on collecting coronavirus-related content through normal work streams, such as harvesting government and private sector websites, collecting PDF publications and podcasts, and running event-based Twitter crawls. And to run these Twitter crawls, we've been using the Twitter API to harvest tweets from the past 7 days with common hashtags used by New Zealanders such as COVID-19 NZ and Lockdown NZ, and then running the crawl on the selected terms weekly. So we've been doing this since these terms began trending. Among our digital collecting, legal deposit, and curatorial staff, we held Zoom meetings first within teams and then across teams to discuss what we wanted to collect and how we might be able to do it. Some work that fit into the library's BAU was already in progress, like web harvest and Twitter crawls I've already mentioned. We developed a brainstorming document with an overview of the types of material we might want to collect relating to COVID-19, including things that hadn't traditionally been included in the library's collections. We then created a shared spreadsheet where staff could enter specific online content for consideration, whether it be a single YouTube video or the full social media account for an organization or public figure, for example. And I want to be very clear that in this initial phase, we're focusing on public domain content rather than people's individual private experiences. And very similar to the State Library of Queensland, we're taking a three-phased approach to this collecting. So from there, we categorized the digital content that was identified by library staff, depending upon whether it was music, performance, other types of videos, image files, memes, etc. And the spreadsheet noted what platform the content was on, which would determine the next steps for acquisition. We then used conditional formatting to highlight any duplicate URLs added to the spreadsheet to make sure that we weren't duplicating effort, and noted whether the content was a one-off event or a repeating series, such as the Prime Minister's daily briefings on Facebook Live, or a Kiwi musician holding a weekly concert from their lounge. With the library's previous social media collecting pilot projects, we spent a lot of time working out the risks at the intersection of the library's legal deposit mandate, the terms and conditions of major overseas platforms, and the ethics of collecting citizen-generated social media content. Because of this prior work and the conversations we'd previously had within the library, we felt comfortable moving more quickly this time around with our collecting because we had draft frameworks for ingest, description, and processing already in place. And we've also been checking in with colleagues from other organizations and getting suggestions from across the sector. Given the fast-moving nature of the situation and the volume of content that is being created online, we're working to identify as much COVID-19 related digital ephemera during lockdown as we can. There are some things that we can collect now, but we'll need to have further conversations with content creators for other materials. We're operating on the theory that we probably won't retain everything we gather in this rapid response collecting phase, but we know how quickly things change online, and as a national institution, we have a responsibility to ensure that we collect significant web-based content for Aotearoa New Zealand. We've also been having discussions about the differences between collecting and providing access to rendered objects versus digital content as technical objects, such as the JSON metadata seen here. We've been considering the kinds of users who will be interested in visually seeing a photograph as it appears on Instagram versus those who are more interested in looking at it and using the technical object. Our goal is to make sure that our social media collecting is meeting both of those user needs. And on that note, I'd like to acknowledge the incredible work of our technologists and digital specialists on staff who have gone over and above the call of duty to make this work possible. They've been experimenting with available tools and scripts and building new ones to meet the needs of our rapid response collecting. And we've also been taking the opportunity to experiment with formats the library hasn't previously collected, such as TikTok, Twitch, Reddit, and Instagram Live, for example. The scripts that we're using and documentation around them are available on GitHub. And when we began harvesting social media content from the web, we definitely found a few surprises. And I really don't want to understate the hard work that's gone into collecting this content and getting these scripts to work for us. One example of a little social media surprise was when we were looking at the metadata for Jacinda Ardern's Facebook Live videos and discovered that the JSON data included a complete transcript, which was a really exciting discovery. However, upon closer look, we discover that the Facebook-generated transcripts definitely do not get everything right and sometimes struggle a bit with the Kiwi accent. I don't have any food the details instead of further details was one of my favorite little glitches that we saw in the transcript. So in summary, we've been identifying a whole bunch of Aotearoa specific COVID-19 online content and acquired as much of it as we can, both as rendered objects and metadata. Our next steps will be analyzing what we've collected so far and doing more detailed appraisal and processing around it. One of the things that I'm particularly excited about is building a collection of COVID-19 memes as a set of digital ephemera. Meme culture is an increasingly important way that we react to the major events going on around us, and researchers have told us that they see this as a valuable collecting stream, but it definitely does pose some interesting challenges in terms of description and copyright. In my own personal opinion, the trickiest part of this work has been striking the balance between ensuring that we're able to collect significant online content in a timely and appropriate manner, while also being sensitive to the fact that we're working during a time of deep trauma and uncertainty, and without the support of shared physical space with our colleagues, friends, and family. For some people, this work has been really motivating during these genuinely strange times. And for others, such a strong focus on COVID-19 content in our work life has felt draining. And if I'm being really honest, I felt both ways at different times during the lockdown. There's so much more I could say, but I'll hand over to our next speaker. Do get in touch if there's any interest in pooling technical resources and working collaboratively on the social media collecting, particularly some of those newer formats. Or if you have any questions or want more information about what we've collected so far and our next steps. Again, this is just one small piece of it. We're also doing an email collecting project. We're looking at digital photography. So this is just a small piece of the puzzle that I've spoken about today. But thank you all very much. Ngā mihi nui.
Thank you so much, Val. That amount of work is incredible and so good to hear about the collaborative approach as well. Memes. I want to see all of the memes preserved for all time. Just putting out my personal bias. But without waffling on any further, I'm going to now throw over to Cassandra Gorton from the New Zealand College of Anaesthetists.
Got it.
I got it.
Thanks, Jay. So ANZCA is the professional organisation for specialist anaesthetists and anaesthetists in training in Australia and New Zealand. So anaesthetists are not just the doctors that put you to sleep. They also provide a wide range of medical services and are part of a multidisciplinary team providing healthcare to patients. Most relevant to COVID-19, however, anaesthetists perform intubation procedures. So they're basically in the spray zone of getting the illness. So they've been very active on Twitter. And as you can see here, this is one of our prominent fellows. This is a tweet she tweets regularly. And her mum didn't know exactly what it was that she does. So in February, the museum curator of ANZCA's Geoffrey K Museum a question on how we could capture and preserve these tweets and how these tweets could potentially be used to form an exhibit in the future. I had previously investigated ways of preserving our websites and social media, but our IT process can be restrictive and slow at times. Some of you may be familiar with the tedium of requiring an admin password to install software, logging a service desk request, then waiting for a mutually convenient time for IT to put the password in. We have to use our existing systems, but copying and pasting the content of a tweet into a database does not preserve its look or functionality. A tweet is more than 280 characters. It's a profile, hashtags, links, and images, and that functionality should be preserved. So if you're not familiar with it, the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine does not require the installation of software, and it can be used through your browser. You put in the URL of the web page you want to save, and it captures the front end as it was on this day. So this is the capture of the previous tweet. It is a bit different because it takes very long to load, so the image isn't there. This isn't a perfect solution. There are some limitations that we've tried to overcome. So if you have an Internet Archive account, you can save your URLs and view them in a dashboard. But there's no way to meaningfully curate, organize, or describe the URLs in the dashboard. So these are pretty saved. So we accession our tweets in Vernon, our museum's collection management software, with a reference to the Wayback Machine saved URL version. Another limitation of our system is identifying tweets to capture. Previously, we would manually browse through individual hashtags to identify tweets to preserve. It was time-consuming and inefficient. As well as the fact that the hashtags are inconsistent and more occurring each day. So on the AusPreserves Google forums, Matt, who you'll hear from next, pointed me in the direction of tags. So tags is a free Google Sheet template which lets you set up and run the automated collection of search results. So here's an example. Tags can be collected for searching beyond 6 days, so any tweet older than that won't be displayed. So since tags is not able to preserve the functionality of a tweet again, we use it as a selection and appraisal tool. We're able to filter all these saved tweets, select the ones we want to preserve, and add the URL to the Wayback Machine. So this has been a lead. So our process doesn't have the convenience of a single system, but it's free and doesn't need any additional software. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Cassandra, for sharing. Last but not least, throwing over to Matthew Burgess.
Thanks, Jay. Just going to share my screen. All right, so hi everyone, my name's Matthew Burgess. I'm a digital collections analyst from the State Library of New South Wales. The link to the slides is just down the bottom left if you want to get a copy of these as well, and I'll provide them afterwards. So I'm going to be talking about emails, but I just thought I'd also quickly highlight what else we're doing at the library in terms of COVID-19 collecting. So we're collecting posters, flyers, mail-outs, and other ephemeral material in response to the pandemic and seeking donations from the public. We have a Twitter and an Instagram campaign, New South Wales at Home. We've recently released the diary files, which is a dedicated website for people to go on and talk about their everyday lives, of just not just the people of New South Wales, but also beyond. We're also doing general and targeted website and social media harvesting via hashtags. And we're not just looking at positive, happy material, so we're also targeting captures of marginalized groups. And we also have a few other initiatives in the works or in production, such as oral histories. But on the topic of emails, so we're collecting emails from any organization or business relating to the pandemic. So staff have been asked to contribute by collecting any emails they receive, whether work or personal, and instructions have been provided for creating a folder or labeling emails and exporting them in PST or MBOX format, depending on what service they're using. And so the focus here is on the content of the emails, not the recipient or necessarily the external websites that it refers to. So there's a few challenges here. So file formats, PST and MBOX is what we're receiving, but that's not necessarily what we'd want to preserve. Personally identifiable information is probably one of the biggest concerns, as well as the links. Access to and the appearance of the emails based on their file format, quantity or the volume of the emails, and duplicates as well. So I did a bit of reading and a bit of research and looking at tools and options, and most tools work on the basis of identifying personally identifiable information, not necessarily removing it. This makes sense in the context of archival collections where you're looking at provenance and you want to record as much as you can, but in this particular case, the content of the email is the focus, and there's a high risk in retaining some of this personally, or PII, I'm going to say for short. So this collection is quite different to a general collection of email archives where you're capturing the richest content and the most complete representation at the point of acquisition. And often you would redact at the point of access. But in this case, I am proposing that we redact at the point of acquisition. So just looking at what personally identifiable information and links there are in emails. Obviously, you have the email address of the recipient. In this example, you've got a membership number, you've got how many points that person has as part of that organization. You've got a link to view the email online, which will also show all of the information in this email. And then at the footer, so this is a different email. Again, you might see the email in the footer. You will have links to update details, change preferences, unsubscribe to the email list. Again, view it online. And you can also have member numbers and other details at the bottom of and footer of emails. The other thing to note is a lot of emails that people are receiving are done through mail programs. So it's kind of sent out in bulk, and often all of the links within these emails are actually redirects from the mail server. So is there any value in retaining a link that's governed by a mailing list redirected URL? So, you know, this example I thought was good, where it's linking to an Australian government website, but if you actually look at the URL, that's not the direct website. So is there any value in retaining this, given that it's unlikely to work in the future? There's also a lot of hidden information in emails. So this is an export from Forensic Toolkit, where it provides all of the header fields and associated information. So again, you're going to get the recipient's email address and their name in here, and a bunch of other information as well. So the other challenge is the access to an appearance of these emails. So this is an example of the EPAD discovery module, showing that Virgin email that I had a screenshot of earlier. So this is just showing you the text and not the complete email as how you would see it in the client, whether it's in Gmail or in Outlook itself. And EPAD does have a discovery module, sorry, where it can only show you entities. So in something like this, it would only be showing you, for example, the first name, the organization, and a lot of the information would be redacted, but that's just for access. And as mentioned earlier, a lot of images and that sort of material in emails is often linked to an external source, and it's presented to the users in a way that appears self-contained, but it's actually retrieved by email clients and viewers at the time of presentation. So it's important to consider capturing this content as well before it's no longer available. So this led me to thinking about archiving emails as PDF. So PDF is completely self-contained. It captures full text and graphical content, can be ingested, stored, preserved, and disseminated from established systems already in use. And importantly, it can also provide the ability to redact some of this information. So most export options for emails can often only be rendered and viewed in email software. I read a really good report yesterday that came out last week, actually. So the draft report on archiving email in PDF was released last week by the Task Force on Technical Approaches for Email Archives, and it discusses a different method of using PDF to what I'm proposing, or what I'm going to show you next. It looks at including emails as an embedded file using the electronic mail format, or EML, and their final report will be released on the 30th of June. I do have a reference to that report. But what I'm proposing is a little bit different to what that report is looking at. So my proposed method is to, if it's not already in an MBOX format, is to convert it to MBOX. And this can be done using a tool which comes in BitCurator, command line tool called readpst. And then bringing it into a program I discovered last week called MBOX Viewer. So this is a Windows program, it's free, it's open source. Using that program to convert the emails into HTML in bulk, naming the files with the date, the sender, and a unique ID from that program. Then converting from HTML to PDF using a command line tool called WK-HTML to PDF, and individually adjusting the height of the page so that the email appears as one page, and importantly here, you can set a parameter to automatically remove all links within an email. So all of those redirect links will be gone. It'll still visually look the same, but those links won't actually be there. And then once I have that PDF, I can bring it into Adobe Acrobat and redact. At this point, the only thing I need to look for is the membership numbers, the recipient's email address, and their name. So as noted in the task force report, it's important, it will be important to record explicit exclusions for this process. So documenting what content or metadata was excluded and why, which will allow future users to gain a much more accurate and complete understanding of the archive. So I'm yet to investigate this side of things. So where this information might be recorded, whether that will be in the digital preservation system, in our catalog, in a text file, or all of the above. So what that results in is something like this. So this is just a few different emails, but you can see the PDF itself is the entire email on one page. It's not broken up into what would be an A4 or other size page. And it's close to the view that the user would see in their mail program or browser of choice, where the full text is searchable and it's embedded with the fonts and the media. It's not completely perfect though. Some emails use CSS or HTML that the HTML to PDF program can't handle very well. So sometimes it results in a PDF that does not look exactly the same as it does in the client or the web browser. And also by using custom dimensions for the PDF, so changing the length of the PDF, they're not printable on standard paper sizes if anyone was looking at doing that. Long emails can be difficult to handle, include in PDF in one page. And by saving as a PDF, emails can't be imported into programs like ePad or Forensic Toolkit for analysis in the same way that an Mbox or a PST could. And in migrating email to multiple formats does introduce the risk of data, metadata, or contextual information that could be lost. But in what I've been looking in terms of what personally identifiable information is there, I personally would not be providing my emails if this information is not redacted. So that's why I've been very keen into looking at what tools are available, what processes can be used to do that. So these are just some of the tools that I listed, and I've got some references there. And thank you.
Thanks, Matt. I would invite everybody to join me in a virtual round of applause for all of our fantastic speakers, Catherine, Dave, Valerie, Cassandra, and Matt. Thank you all so much. So, onto the discussion and questions. I'm going to go right back to the start. Look, I've found a few in the chat box, but if I have missed yours, pop it in there again. But I'm going to go right back up to Amy's question for Dave. Firstly, Dave, have you looked at Web Recorder for archiving the emails from their campaign URLs?
I just started looking at it just then. I suppose the point is that I've had chats with Amy on the side back and forth while everything else is going on. We don't have that, some of the emails don't have that view in a browser option, which makes sense if you had the web recorder. If you could view it in the browser, you could use the web recorder. And I think she's just going to check with a couple of the people back at work how we could use the web recorder for that. I was thinking about converting everything to PDF, similar to what Matt was talking about, but it's good. It's good to see he's got the whole process there. So I just steal this. Thanks, Matt. I don't have to do that work. I'm lazy like that. Whoops, this is being recorded. I'm not lazy.
You're not lazy at all, Dave. This is what we do. We don't reinvent. If there's a great process, we take it and adapt it. This is the point. So moving on, I'm mindful that Jennifer at Uni of Sydney Library has a privacy and donation materials question. If anyone wants to contribute to Jennifer in the chat box, that would be great. Valerie mentions that Jay and Svetlana, who built and compiled the social media collecting scripts for National Library New Zealand, are here today. So if there's any questions for them, I may have missed them, but I'm getting there. Chuck them in the chat as well. Ingrid, question perhaps to all of our speakers, how is community outreach that is associated with the COVID-19 connected to these efforts in this targeted collecting?
I can speak to that. This is Catherine from State Library of Queensland. Our community outreach has been quite extensive with partnerships with Indigenous knowledge centers, using our blogs, using all of our networks to reach out to indicate different areas of collecting that we're interested in. And that's been working really, really well.
Any other speakers want to weigh in on that one?
I can if my sound is working.
You're good for now.
Good for now. Yeah, so our fellows are very active in our community, the anaesthetists, always sharing, letting us know, you know, save this, do that. Yeah, they love it. They're really interested in what we do.
I just wanted to add one more point. This is Catherine again. So with a lot of our new audiences that we generally don't interact with that much, like hospital staff and some of that, they're thrilled. They're absolutely thrilled that we're doing this. They're really excited about what we're doing and they want to know more information. And they want access.
It's always about the access, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's Dave here. When I was at the police checkpoints at the border, I was quite surprised how more people were willing to get their pictures taken. Some of them a bit ludicrous. But when you said you're from the State Library and collecting it for, you know, you're collecting this for future reference, and they became a lot more friendlier and easier to hand out stuff, you know, make us take pictures and stuff like that. So I think there's a general awareness of that's going on there, that something is being collected. I think from our point of view, from Australasia Preservers, is when we get the stuff coming in from community, we'll have to do those format shifts to make it preservable, because if I'm up in Thursday Island and they've got probably have special procedures up there, how do we capture that information? But then we don't want to say you must supply it to us in mod format using this Kodak and all that. We just want the material, and we then have to do the work to make it available. I think we don't want to block the community by saying we only want tips. We want them to supply us information and then we'll process it from there.
It's Christine here, but I'm just speaking personally in terms of collecting within Queensland. What I've noticed is that there's still a big sector bias. So the library collects, the museum collects, the archives collects. So that is still something that I'm not sure how, and I'm sure it will happen, but cohesive, the collecting is happening across, from my experience, across the states. As I say, it's not a state library's perspective, it's my perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Christine. That's interesting reflection shared there. If I can move on to Jessica. Jessica's question. Interested if you could potentially do a process where the PDF is one access, but other formats are retained for future analysis. Running on from your comments, Dave, just then, I suppose that's a nice segue.
I think Andrea also had the same question. I was just thinking about different kinds of future research that might be needed to deal with. So the PPI for right now, but also what if somebody wanted to run a kind of more computational analysis along a bunch of sets of emails in the future?
I'll be interested to hear Matt's idea on this, but I'd be keeping the original and making a modified master, which would be the redacted. There's always the master, then there's the deliverables. So the redacted one will be a deliverable, and if you want to get access to the master itself, the original files, that have to go through some sort of process. But then we'd have to look at how we migrate all those PST files when Office, 3000 comes out or something like that. I don't know how. That's things we have to look at. What do you think, Matthew?
Well, yeah, it's been quite interesting, and I guess my thinking has kind of shifted around back and forth. And if I was dealing with an archival collection, like say an author's collection where we receive their mailbox, of course I would retain the original, and can definitely see the value of retaining that original and providing redacted access copies. But in this case, I am looking at it purely as, or what are we trying to capture here? And that's purely the content of the email. We don't need to know anything about the recipient in this context or in what we're trying to capture. I can definitely see that there's risk here in removing this information. It might limit the what researchers can do in the future. But I think if it's kind of explicit that this collection, I'm talking about the state libraries, is purely looking at the content of these emails, and we've processed it in this particular way for this particular reason, then that provides that context. And I think because it's a PDF, because it's full text searchable, there's ways that it can be analyzed, just not in the same way as it could be if it was a PST or an MBOX format. So it's kind of, it's a challenging thing to be dealing with. And my view has come down to the point of there's too much personally identifiable information in there that is way too risky to retain. And I think the easiest solution is to just get rid of it.
Interested, I've just been trying to catch up on all the chat and amazing discussion going on. I'm really interested in Sophie's question. I see, Val, you've answered it around permissions in social media. I wonder, Val, can you just expand a little bit on the challenges in that area?
Yeah, I can give that a go. It's a really big topic, and it's something that we're continually reflecting on just to make sure that we are collecting these materials in an appropriate way. So as Amy Joseph has pointed out, she's our team leader for Legal Deposit. We are able to collect social media content under the library's Legal Deposit mandate. But we have lots of conversations about the best and appropriate ways to collect that. So one of the current mitigations that we have in place in terms of risk of somebody saying, why is my social media content here, even though they've put it out publicly, is that we don't have that digital content being made available open access. So somebody will actually have to come to the reading room or potentially a virtual reading room space to be able to access that material. So that way, if somebody does delete their entire Twitter account, we haven't put that online, even though we have collected it.
Maybe Cass here from the National Library of Australia. Like New Zealand, our interpretation of our legislative ability means that we can collect social media content under our legal deposit, but there's technical challenges in doing that. We're not actively collecting at the moment using Twitter's API, for example. Unlike New Zealand, they haven't been very kind in giving us permission to do that. But we do collect selected social media sites via our web archiving. So we mainly focus on public government social media handles or politicians, and we archive the website of the social media page. So we don't ask for permission, but we have a very effective takedown policy. So I think that's a really important part of collecting social media, is to be able to respond very quickly and effectively to any request to take down material.
I would just add one thing, which is very similar to what Libby was saying. So for at the National Library in New Zealand, we sort of have a two-prong. So under legal deposit, we can collect one way, but we're also then seen in the sort of the more archival collecting way where we would ask for a whole downloaded social media account. And in that case, we would go through a permission process and get a donor agreement and agree on what sort of access permissions that would be part of the account. So that's kind of one of the ways we're trying to balance it, is to get the depth for a few accounts and then the breadth using kind of our web archiving, social media API collecting.
Yeah, it's Libby here from the library again. We have a similar process in our sort of digital archives, collecting, the manuscripts or papers of individuals, and we negotiate the access conditions with them at point of deposit, particularly around their social media. So we have collected some through our digital archive process, but the challenges of making that discoverable and accessible, we haven't resolved yet. We're working on it.
Can I add it's Jo here from Sydney. We're doing it anonymously at the moment. So with our busy CSIRO collaboration, we're capturing stuff, but we're only providing access to it anonymously. at the moment. That's how we're getting around it. We're looking now to obviously expand a little bit more with COVID-19 collecting, and then we'll look at access and all that kind of stuff in the future, but that's how we're doing it.
Yeah. Sorry, just to add here from the National Library, we've also been partnering with colleagues from the University of Queensland on the National Twitter Archive. So there is an ARC LEAF grant project archiving Australian social media, and the National Library will become the repository of that whole National Twitter Archive at some point in the future.
Thanks, Libby. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everyone. Jessica, for contributing there. I'm wondering if any of our speakers would like to just finally give some wrap-up comments. I'm aware we've got just a few minutes left, but just wrap-up comments on anything you didn't get to cover or anything you'd like to share.
It's Matt here. I just wanted to say that I'm very much interested in what people think of my proposed workflow and outputs, because obviously something that is not part of my workflow is the researcher side and what's usable for a researcher on the other end. Just quickly on the topic of access, I would expect for our email archive, we would only provide on-site access. So it's not necessarily something we would make available online. But my line of thinking was, if I give someone, you know, however many PDF documents, there are programs available now where people can do sentiment analysis and pull all the text from those and do some analysis there. But I'm definitely keen to hear what people think of my approach.
Christine, again, would be to it's documenting the process so that when a researcher does come to the data in the future, they can understand what the process has been and what they're actually working with, so they're not comparing apples with oranges, etc. It's that documentation that underpins preservation, physical, intangible, digital, so that it's accessible upfront through the researcher, not something they find by mining into a catalogue or the like. Personal opinion. Cheers.
Good opinion.
Matthew, this is Catherine again. I just had a question about your on-site only access to your emails. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
So we don't actually have any mechanisms in place for that at the moment, but that's the intention. So I don't really have much to say in terms of how we're going to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Final question I've just noticed. Thanks, Angeletta. Interested in knowing how many people were involved in the project in Queensland, distributed across the organisation? Quickly, Catherine and Dave, if you could maybe touch on that one.
Well, the immediate team, the collecting building team, took position very quickly, and I think there are 9 of us. And then from there, it spread across to our larger Queensland memory team, which has about 19. And now we're moving across the organizations to all kinds of work units, including preservation services, the comms, marketing people, on and on and on, engagement. So it's spreading across the entire organization.
Thanks, Catherine. I think that is all the time we have for today. We could probably go another hour, but we won't. That's it. Thank you so much again, Catherine, Dave, Cassandra, Val, Matt. Thank you so much. That was really amazing. Keep the conversations going on the AusPreserves forum. I will try and put together a blog post trying to capture all of the very fabulous things that were shared today. I should mention also, we've got an events calendar now up on the website, thanks to Matt. I've put a little link in there for that. Check the website for all the events that go on now. Next meeting is Digitisation and Preservation on the 27th of May, and we'll send around details in the AusPreserves forum about that. As always, if you have an idea about a topic or something you'd like to share, get in touch. We can organise a meeting quite easily, and we're always looking for new ideas. That's it, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today, and we'll be in touch on the forum.